True. In this world of today, one of the critical things for people to understand is personal finance. And personal finance is not personal finance without understanding what debt means, right? Because most people that I know are in some sort of a way involved in taking some sort of debt. And in literal sense or literal meaning, taking a debt or borrowing is increasing the capacity to spend without the earning being on the same capacity, which means that you are actually borrowing money from your future self, meaning that at that point in the future, you're going to have to produce more than you spend. So it's very much important that we understand what debt is, right? And then you will be sorted if you understand what debt is, right? So, as you know, in this channel, we talk all things real estate, all things personal finance, so that you are the driver of your financial life and not just the passenger. So let's get to how debt actually works. Is it? Okay. So normally, just before going to debt, right? Normally, there's what we call a transaction, which is the basic form, the basic part of an economy, right? A transaction is when a buyer and a seller is exchanging some goods through the money, right? Which will be the medium of exchange at that point, right? This is what happens actually when you do a transaction. But you can do the transaction in a form of cash or in a form of debt, right? Or credit, right? So this is what forms the building blocks of an economy, right? But most people, because of how the economy is designed, they are not able to actually pay cash for everything they need. So what they do is that they need to borrow money or to take debt in order to finance whatever they want to finance, whether they want to buy a house, whether they want to buy a car, whether they want to invest in some sort of a business or whatever, right? But in a normal transaction, a buyer will come with some cash of whatever value it is to buy whatever goods the seller is selling. And in that case, that at that point, the transaction is done, right? But in terms of debts, how it works is that a seller is coming with goods and a buyer is coming with credit. But before they come with that credit, it means the lender needs to be involved to give them some money. And for them to involve to give them the money, it means they need to be have some sort of affordability, some sort of collateral that they can use against them, right? So in that case, now you have three parties involved: the lender, the buyer, the seller, right? In most cases, the seller. The people borrow because they don't have that earning capacity to produce whatever the worth of the item they want to buy. But the most critical thing to understand is that between the buyer and the lender at that moment, or let's say the borrower and the lender, when you lend money, you are both creating an asset and a liability for yourself, right? The asset is created for the lender, the liability is actually for the borrower. So it's very much important to understand that that liability, it's a minus on your side, and you need to have some sort of capacity or some plan to recover from that liability. So this is why in an economy we have cycles, because it creates a cycle. Borrowing creates a cycle. Our economy is based on an IOU, which means that we create money out of thin air. We create money that is nowhere. So when we print money, you are creating a cycle. So this is why the economy works like that in cycle. Right. But what am I trying to bring you? I'm trying to bring you to understand that when you take debt, you need to be able to understand that you are creating a circle at that time. You are not creating a straight line. If you are coming with cash, then it's a straight line. But if you are coming with credit or debt, you just created a circle, which means that at this point you are spending is this, is like this, is high, and then in the future your spending must be like this so that you can actually recover from what you have spent here. Right, this is the point that so many people are struggling with and are living hand to mouth because they don't anticipate, they just get too excited with buying whatever they buy at this point of the high spending, and not considering that that high spending today will create a low spending tomorrow. Then when your salary comes in, it goes out because you created a cycle. So you need to be able to understand. That's why in terms of debt, you need to take the kind of debt that you afford, right? The kind of debt that you afford and the kind of debt that you need. Otherwise, pay every other thing cash. The most important thing is to take debt for high value items that you can actually not afford with cash. I'm talking about a house, a car. Other things, I think to do cash is much preferable because you must know that you are creating this cycle that I'm talking about, right? And then if you over indebt yourself, then don't be surprised that you are not able to spend in the near future. So it's very important also to understand that there's what we call a good debt and a bad debt, right? A good debt is such a debt that sort of maybe has a potential asset or has a potential to create some sort of income or some sort of an asset for you in the future. So it is so much advisable that you understand when you take this kind of a debt. And then a bad debt is one that is a pure liability that's going to be taking money out of your pocket. So preferably, I will advise that you actually take good debt. So for example, a good debt might be a house, for example. A house is a potential asset depending on how you use it. For example, if you are using your house to rent it out, it's a potential asset. It's gonna create some sort of income for you. But also, if you buy a house to stay in, it is also a potential asset. But at that moment that you are staying in, because it's only taking money out of your pocket, is a liability. But the moment you decide to sell that house, because over time you create equity by repaying the bond repayment, also by over time the property will probably appreciate in value. So that creates a value, and it creates the asset of that house. But for example, if you're talking about a car and you're just driving it, you are paying insurance, installment, petrol, it's a liability. And the worst thing is that it's a depreciating item, which means that over time it loses value. So you need to be sort of have that understanding of those items that you're buying. And I mean, some people go as far as buying clothes with accounts. I'm not against that, but if you understand that you are creating this for an item that will depreciate over time, maybe you need to relook at that and maybe buy your clothes cash. I mean, clothes can't be that expensive if you are buying simple clothes, right? And do we actually need these fancy things that Okay, let me not get to that because some people will attack me on that. Okay, good to go with your clothes, your fancy clothes. Just know that this will get to you. When your salary comes in, the next day it's gone. You don't see where it goes, right? But it's very much important to understand how you must use debt, right? This is the point that I'm pointing at. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, to like, to share with your friends. I mean, if you've watched until this far, it means this video have added some sort of value in your life. Cheers. I'll see you in the next one.